Hey guys, and welcome back to Top Speed Golf. And today's video is going to be a little different than what we normally do. Normally in a video I try to break it down, give you just the key concepts, keep the videos relatively short. That way we cut to the chase, get right to what we're doing, and then immediately do some drills so we can take some action on this. In today's video, I've been trying to do this big series on dead solid contact. So where does really good ball striking come from? If we take Ben Hogan, if we take Adam Scott, if we take Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, Jason Day, whoever you like, whoever your favorite player is, there's an actual science for how they contact the ball that's dead solid, that's really compressed, hard hit shots. We can teach that. In the day that we live in now, we can measure these types of things, and I can tell you how you can hit just like those players and what they actually did as they're contacting the ball, what impact looked like, how they get that great sound. Well, there's 7 factors of this. And each one of those factors, we can do a lot of different drills and things in there. So I have this gigantic series I've been planning on making. I've been putting it off for the last couple of months because it takes a lot of time. It takes weeks for me to make a series like that. So I figured, why don't I do something a little bit different? Just turn on the camera, go through the whole thing. We're gonna have kind of a longer video here today, pretty long video. And I'm gonna break it down piece by piece and just go through this entire thing in one video. That way I can get the information to you guys as soon as possible. So this video is probably, just a guess, it's going to be somewhere between an hour and 2 hours long. We're going to break down those 7 factors. I'm going to go over each piece of the body. I'm going to talk exactly how it happens, how your club comes through contact, and it's a little bit of a different format, so I wanted to warn you, it may not be for everybody out there. If you're looking for a quick tip that you can take to the course, this is not going to be the video for you, but tons and tons of good information. We're going to have hundreds of pieces of information in this that are really going to help you to improve your contact and get that great ball striking. So without any more talking, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so if you're joining us on YouTube, I'm going to play the first portion of this video, a pretty good portion. You're going to get tons of great information. And then if you want to see this entire video, just go ahead and click the link that's going to pop up on your screen. You'll be taken to a place where you can throw in your email address, no charge at all. You'll be able to get all access to this video and find out the 7 factors that go into really pure ball striking, some great drills on how to do this and how to check it out for your own game. So let's go ahead and get after it. All right, so the first thing we'll do, let's go over very briefly what are the 7 factors, then we'll dive into each of the 7 factors and break them down piece by piece. So number 1 is going to be speed. How hard I hit this golf ball. So it doesn't matter if I'm hitting a pitching wedge or a driver. If I want to hit this ball really hard, I want to really compress this golf ball. The faster my club is moving into this golf ball, the more speed that I have, the more compression I'm going to get. So think of it this way. Let's imagine I have this golf ball here and I'm swinging this 6-iron, and I come down and I'm swinging, say 30 miles an hour, pretty soft swing. That would probably only hit the ball, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 yards, something like that. It's going to compress against the face just a little bit with that kind of swing speed. Now if I ramp that up to 90 miles an hour, getting close to what you'd see on the PGA Tour, low 90s, I'm going to be compressing that ball even harder. Now if I was a long drive player and I'm swinging this 6-iron 100 and I don't know what they swing a 6-iron, probably 120 miles an hour, something crazy like that. Well, I can hit this 6-iron a heck of a long way, 220 or 30 yards, or however far a Jamie Sadlowski type player would hit that. So as my speed goes up, I can physically compress the golf ball more. If you go out and you watch long drive hitters, when they really connect with one, they hit it really solid and really straight, the sound is amazing. It's like nothing you've ever heard before because they're actually putting more energy into that golf ball. Now the rest of these factors, when we get away from speed, is how direct is that energy going in the golf ball. The more direct we can transfer all of the energy from the club into the golf ball, the more solid it's going to be, the better the sound is going to be, and the more compressed it's going to be overall. So the next factor we'll talk about here is the angle of attack. So as I'm swinging this club, it's naturally going to come up and it's going to go down, and I should be taking a divot, nice shallow divot in front of the ball. What angle is my club coming down into the ball? So if my club was coming directly level into the ball, I would have a 0-degree angle of attack, and I would transfer a lot of energy into this golf ball. Now let's imagine I'm coming over the top, and I have my over the top slice swing, and I'm coming this way across it. Well, now all of a sudden, this club is glancing on this ball. So even if I'm swinging 120 miles an hour, this is going to be a glancing blow. I'm not going to transfer the energy from the ball, or from the club into the ball with a lot of efficiency. If I'm swinging very level, I'm transferring more of that energy into. Imagine a piston, a steel piston, and here's a golf ball, and it's going to fire directly into that golf ball I'm transferring that energy into there. But now all of a sudden, let's imagine that I did this with that piston. Well, I'm glancing across the golf ball. I'm not going to get as much energy in there. So angle of attack, very, very important. So when you're watching a really good player, you know, those top name players, Hogan, Scott, Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, if you look at their divots, they're really, really thin. And we'll get into that in more detail, but they're really compressing the golf ball, hitting it very solidly, and angle of attack is a big piece of that. Most mid and high handicap players, their angle of attack is way off. And I'm gonna give you some great drills on how to work on that. So that's the second piece. The next one is gonna be face angle. So when I come into this golf ball, if my face is pointed way over to the right and I'm swinging straight ahead, well again, I'm getting a glancing blow. That golf ball, that club face is sliding across the ball, and I'm not transferring that energy directly into the golf ball. That's also gonna cause a slice, a block to the right. We'll get into percentages and all that kind of thing here later in the video too. And then path relates directly with that. So usually when we're talking about, am I hitting a fade, am I hitting a draw, we're talking about path, which means when my club contacts the ball, is my club moving right to left this way across the golf ball? That would be a left path, that direction. Or is my path moving inside out to the right across the golf ball? And path is only talking about that split second right when I'm contacting the golf ball, or if I'm looking on a radar, that split second right before I make contact with the golf ball and what direction that's going. So again, face and path, the straighter I get those, the more this club is coming into contact directly straight with the golf ball, the more energy I get in the golf ball, the better it sounds, the more spin, the more all this stuff is gonna be a lot better. So that's the fourth key there. The fifth one, we're gonna talk about the loft on the face. So again, if I have this face wide open like this, imagine opening up a lob wedge and I'm sliding underneath this ball, I could swing as fast as I want to swing. The ball's not going to be very compressed. It's going to slide on the face. It's going to pop up in the air. And a lot of players are doing that. As I'm hitting this golf ball, I need to have compression by getting some forward shaft lean and de-lofting the club face. A good rule of thumb, PGA Tour players are de-lofting. Let's say this is a pitching wedge with 45 degrees. It's not a pitching wedge. Let's actually grab the real pitching wedge here. 45 degrees of loft coming out of this face. They're gonna de-loft that about 30% of that loft. So from 45 to 30 degrees. If you're using a 3-iron with 21 degrees loft, 30% of that would be not quite as much forward shaft lean when we're going into the longer irons. With a driver, we'll get into a little more detail on that, but you're not gonna have much forward shaft lean with a driver, not very much loft on it. So we have speed, we have angle of attack, we have face, we have path, we have the loft. And when I say loft, I mean the actual loft that is on the face, which is called the dynamic loft. So even if I have a number that's written on this club saying this is 30 degrees, if I turn it down to where it's only 20 degrees of loft, that's the dynamic loft, or the actual loft that's being delivered into the golf ball. As we move forward from there, we're talking about contact. So as I contact this ball, if I hit off the toe, this club face is going to tend to twist open. So let's go ahead and get close to the camera here. If I hit this ball off the toe, my face is going to twist open, and that's going to actually spin the golf ball in the opposite direction. That's what's called a gear effect. So if I hit it right on the dead center, sweet spot, center of mass of the club head itself, that's going to give me the best contact, the most compression on the golf ball. And then lastly, probably one of the most common mistakes that I see is, what is my lie angle? So this club is designed in a way to where if I swing this club and I make a really good swing, the sole of my club is going to be flush with the turf as it comes on through. A lot of times, if we get into early extension, which I see lots of players doing, we do kind of one of these things, our hands raise up, and now all of a sudden you imagine that toe of the club kind of digging down into the ground, and now my toe is going to be hitting before my heel as I'm swinging down. The club face is going to twist. I'm going to have a tough time getting compression on it, and that plays into it. So those 7 factors, I'm going to give you drills. I'm going to break it down for you as much as I can. So those 7 factors are going to determine how good at golf you are. So if you're going to be a world-class player, you're going to be #1 in the world, you're going to do all 7 of those factors pretty daggone close to perfect every single time. Now there's going to be ranges. Obviously, if we're going to hit a ball that's going to be high, it's going to launch way up in the air, we're going to try to get it to land soft on the green. That's going to be a little bit different on these factors than if we're trying to hit like a low stinger type shot. Maybe you're taking a long iron and trying to really hit a low penetrating shot. You're obviously going to play around with these, but if you're talking about really, really good ball striking, you're doing these 7 things. You have complete control of all 7 of these, and that's what you're looking at when you're watching the best players in the world. They're mastering these seven scientific factors. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the very first one. Let's do speed. So we'll take the driver out here, and let me grab a tee. That way it's a little bit more realistic. And there's several places that speed come from, and this is something that I talk about in a lot of detail in the Top Speed Golf system. So I have a whole section. The very first one is a power turn. That's one of the 5 major fundamentals in the golf swing. We also have lag. So our power turn is going to be how much we load up the body going back and how much we rotate the body coming through. That creates an overall momentum. We also have lag, which is creating some angles with your forearms. So you can see your forearms creating some angles, and then as I get into the straight line release, those angles are releasing, and I'm letting that club whip through contact and to really accelerate with a lot of speed. Let's start with from the ground up, and let's talk about how we build speed throughout the entire body and how that's actually going to affect. We're not going to get into tons of detail on speed because there's so much of that on the website in the Top Speed Golf system that I think that'll be better served to really work through those systems rather than me just doing a short synopsis of that here. So the first thing, probably the most important one, is we got to get our body to load up. That's what we go over in the power turn. If I want to swing this club 120, 125 miles an hour and get that PGA Tour quality speed, that's going to be ideal. You know, if you swing right around 130 miles an hour is probably the maximum that's for realistic golf to get the most compression on the golf ball. There are guys that swing 145. I think there's a few guys that even swung 150. That's great, but pretty uncontrollable. People just aren't big and strong and fast enough to be able to swing that hard and be able to put it in the fairway every time. So if you're swinging less than 130, I got a pretty good feeling you probably are. I don't swing 130 on my normal one. I'm usually around 118, 120. We could all pick up a little bit of speed and get a little bit farther, get a little bit more distance. If you're an older player, maybe your swing speed's pretty low. This doesn't mean you have to swing in the 120s. We're just saying that if you can go from 80 miles an hour swing speed to 85, you're going to hit the ball better. You're going to get closer to those 7 key principles. So the first one here is, as I'm going into the backswing, I want to make sure that I let my hips rotate. My hips are going to rotate about 45 degrees roughly in the backswing. And as I turn my shoulders, I'm going to get my shoulders to rotate at least 90 degrees, preferably a little bit more than that. PGA Tour players actually rotate closer to 120 degrees from shoulder socket to shoulder socket as they're doing their backswing. And that's really crucial. You can imagine this like a drag car. As I'm loading up in the backswing, the more I load up, the more space I'm giving my hands and arms, and the more space I'm giving the club to create acceleration. So if you have a drag strip and one car is going, let's say, 1/8 of a mile, and another car has 1/4 of a mile or 1/2 of a mile to accelerate, which one do you think will be able to create more speed? Well, if the 2 cars are the same, the longer the period of time I have to accelerate, the longer the period of time I have to increase the force in the golf club, the more speed I'm going to have. So as I go to the top of the swing, if I get nice and loaded up, get that big turn, well, now I have a lot of room to accelerate this golf club. A big mistake that I see people make time and time again is they pick up the ball or pick up the club with their arms. So now I start to pick up with my arms. My shoulders haven't turned, my body hasn't turned, my arms aren't very far back, and now I'm having to really try to accelerate hard. A lot of times I'll try to cast to create some more speed in that short period of time. I'll really feel like I'm jerky, like I'm really not smooth with my swing. That's just because I'm not giving myself enough space to create speed. So that's one of the key concepts we talk about in Top Speed Golf system. It's one of the key concepts to perfect ball striking. We've got to get those hips and shoulders to rotate, get a nice full backswing, and then as we're coming on through, we're going to rotate all the way on around, where now my hips have rotated through, my belt buckle's facing the target, and my shoulders have come all the way on around to where now they're facing what would be into the left rough. If I'm going, excuse me, this way, as I swing on through, now I'm coming into the left rough there. So as I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I have plenty of space, plenty of time to build up that speed. That's really going to help me to hit the golf ball with a lot of power. That's going to increase the club head speed in the ball, which is going to increase the compression of the golf ball. Now, the next thing in the speed that I'll go over is creating lag. We got to create a whip with this club. There's no way we can create enough force just by moving our body or our arms without creating a whip-like action to get that 120 miles an hour or that 100 mile an hour or that whatever your individual level is. There's no way we can create enough speed just by trying to use sheer force. We have to create a lever. So as you're making your downswing, my golf club is setting. So as I go back, I'm not setting the club very much. We go over this in the lag section. As I start down, now I'm increasing the angle between my wrist. And then from here, I'm actually pulling this butt end of this club, starting to turn it back up toward the center of my body to get that club to whip on through as I come through the follow through. As that's happening, another thing we go over is to make that lag, we have to shallow out this club. So if I'm coming in steep and over the top, you'll see how it appears that I don't have very much of an angle of lag. So you can see that's probably maybe 75 degrees. Well, watch what happens when I lay that down. Now all of a sudden I have a sharper angle here, what it looks like on camera. Same angle, it appears sharper, and that's flattening that club out so that I'm on the right plane to be able to get some speed into that golf club. So those are the key concepts there. Make sure you get your hips to turn, your shoulders to turn going back. That's plenty of space to accelerate. And then as you're coming on through, those shoulders and hips are going to turn on through to get plenty of room to keep that momentum going. When we add lag to that, now we're getting very little wrist set, increasing that wrist set, and then we're going to let that go into what we call the straight line release, meaning that I took all these angles, let those go, and my club head will accelerate to get the speed. So like I said, I'm going to break those things down much more in the system, but I want you to be very comfortable with those and understand the faster I swing, the harder I hit this golf ball, the more compression I'm going to get. Now the next thing we'll talk about here is the angle of attack. This one is going to vary slightly depending on which club you're hitting and what type of shot you want to hit. So with a driver, let's start with the shallowest angle of attack. On the PGA Tour, the average angle of attack, or the average, again, angle of attack is my club moving down into the ball? Is it moving up into the ball, or dead level? Remember, dead level with no loft on the face is 100% compression. That's the most energy going into the ball. As I hit my driver, my ball is a little bit farther up in my stance. So if I'm from this angle, my driver's now on the inside of my front foot. And as I swing, my arc is going to be pretty level. PGA Tour angle of attack is -1, meaning that the club is moving down -1 degree into that golf ball. So very, very slight amount. A clock face, 360 degrees around that circle, 1 minute on the clock is 6 degrees. So it's a 1/6 of 1 minute. That's how small of an angle of attack we're talking about. So the driver, because it's a little bit farther up, it's going to be a pretty level angle of attack. Now if I wanted to get a higher launching shot and I wanted to get more distance, let's say that I wanted to launch that ball higher so that it'll carry farther, but I don't want to get too much spin on it, which we'll get to later on in this video, I may tilt my body back a little bit more and get a higher angle of attack, or I may play it even farther up in my stance, and so I can get a positive angle of attack, and when I de-loft the club, I'll still have low spin and a lot of compression in there, and we can do that and get a little bit more distance. That's why you see the long drive guys, something that we talk about in the Top Speed Golf system, is that we have to have what's called the compression line, where as I come into impact, this is with driver and irons, as I come into impact, my left ankle, my left hip, and my left shoulder are all in a straight line, but instead of that line being straight up and down, they're tilted away from the target. What that allows me to do is set my body up in a position to where I can come in nice and shallow into that straight line release, and I can hit that ball very level with the ground. So that's very, very important to getting speed. So that's with the driver. We're going to have around a level angle of attack. 0 degrees angle of attack would be ideal. If you want to be one of the best ball strikers in the world, you're going to want to be around level. A little bit positive is okay. If we start going negative, we'll talk about it in a minute why that's not a good thing. Now as we get to longer irons, let's go back to the 6-iron. I still want to be nice and shallow. So with all the tests that they've done on ball striking with the best players in the world, we're finding that the angle of attack with a pitching wedge is going to be somewhere around -4 or -5 degrees. Remember that clock face, the 1 minute on the clock, is -6. So as I'm hitting down into this ball, that's pretty shallow. If I'm -4 or 5, I'm not hitting down very, very hard. As I get into longer irons, your 6 iron may be down -3, I think about 3.2 on average. Doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere around -3. Your longer irons are going to be high 2s. So basically, if you want to boil it down, everything is coming in pretty daggone shallow, almost like if you're taking a razor blade and you're just shaving the top layer of grass off the ground, but you're not going to go ahead and take a big divot. You don't want a lot of dirt to fly up. You don't want to hit down into the ground very hard. I want to come in really level so that I can get that compression on the ball. If my club is coming in level, it's transferring all of its energy into the golf ball instead of across the golf ball. So shallow angle of attack. Now, how do we do that? That's the big key. How do we get that shallow angle of attack? Before I go over that, I want to go over the face angle, the loft. And then when you can put those two together and understand how both those play together, you'll unlock a level of ball striking that you probably don't even know anybody that hits the ball that well, or maybe the very best players in your local club hit the ball that well. So as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to take about 30% of loft off these irons. So if this is a 6 iron, I'm gonna whatever the natural amount of loft is, I'm gonna take about 30% of that loft off. So I'm gonna have forward shaft lane. Let's go back to the pitching wedge angle because that's easy math. 45 degrees on a pitching wedge, 30% of that would be 15 degrees. So I'm gonna take 15 degrees of forward shaft lean, taking 15 degrees off this face. Now if I come in nice and level with the ground, that's gonna be my angle of attack. That's this first line here of the spin wedge. This is what's called the spin wedge. That second angle is going to be the face, how much loft, dynamic loft we have on there. We said we started out with 45 and we de-lofted it until we only have 30 degrees of loft on the face. So this is the amount of loft on the face. This is the angle of attack. The tighter these two angles are together, the less spin you have and the more compression you have. So if I have a pitching wedge with 30 degrees and the angle of attack is 0, that's 30 degree spin wedge. That's a pretty daggone high spinning shot. Pretty good wedge difference. And I'm gonna have a decent amount of compression for a pitching wedge, but not nearly the amount of compression I would have, let's say, with a 3 iron. My 3 iron loft at impact may only be 16, 17 degrees. So my angle of attack is still pretty level. We'll simplify the math and say it's 0. We know it's normally -2 or something like that. And let's say I have 16 degrees of actual loft. Well, now I've only got 16 degrees difference between this spin wedge. Less spin on your 3 iron, not going to get as many RPMs because the wedge is tighter. More compression on your 3 iron, you're going to get more energy into the ball. So if I take this pitching wedge and I swing this 120 miles an hour, I've got that 30 degree spin wedge. It's not going to hit the ball that far. I'm going to swing 120 miles an hour and a pitching wedge is not going to go 300 yards, no matter how fast I swing it. I'm going to take this driver. Now I'm going to come in level. That's that level angle of attack. My driver, let's say it has 10 or 12 degrees of loft on it. I've got a really tight spin wedge, less spin, more compression, more energy going into the golf ball. So now if I hit this driver, I make contact 120 miles an hour, I'm going to boom it out there 300 yards pretty much all day long because I've tightened up that spin wedge and I've increased my compression. So the two key concepts there, and I'll walk you through some drills on this, but the two key concepts there are, number 1, very shallow angle of attack, and number 2, I got to de-loft my clubs. The driver, you're not going to de-loft as much. The pitching wedge, the sand wedge, you're going to de-loft a lot. If you want to get a lot of spin, just a little side note here before we get on the details, if I want a ton of spin, I want that angle to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 47 spin wedge. So let's say I'm hitting a 56 degree sand wedge here. I'm going to de-loft that club about 15 degrees. So let's say I have about 41 degrees loft on the face. So 41 degrees, and I'm hitting down into the ball 5 or 6 degrees. That gets me to right at about 47. That 47 to 50 degree spin wedge is the absolute maximum spin you can get. So if you want to suck the ball back on the green, that's what you got to do with your wedges. If I want to hit my irons long, I'm doing the same thing, because there's less loft, I'll get less spin, my longer irons. But that 47 to 50 degree spin wedge, most spin, that ball starts spinning like crazy. It'll hold on every single green if you're de-lofting the face and coming in pretty nice and shallow like we want to do. So interesting side note, we won't get too caught up on that. Let's talk about how to pure our full swing, our irons, our driver, that kind of thing. So the first was the angle of attack. We got to get that level. The shallower we get, the shallower the angle of attack we're going to get, the farther we're going to hit the golf ball, the more compression we're going to have. So how the heck do we do that? I mean, it's nice to say, okay, we're going to swing level, but then we start thinking, well, I'm going to get forward shaft lean. It gets really confusing. Well, let's start from the legs up. If I'm going to hit this golf ball, and move this out of the way, I need to have forward shaft lean on there, and I need to be coming in shallow. So let's start and look at the legs. As I make my downswing, I'm going to start to bend my legs, and my chest is actually going to get closer to the ground. So from there, what's happening is the butt end of my club is also getting fairly low to the ground. I got a lot of lag here, a lot of forward shaft lean. As I extend up with my legs, the butt end of my club is actually going to work up. So if we're looking at it from this way, as I go to the downswing, I'm bending my legs. My butt end of the club is working low to the ground. I'm exaggerating here just so we can see it easier on camera. It happens to a much smaller degree when you're actually hitting. And then as I extend my legs up and I start to let my shoulder rotate up, that's going to rotate my hand up, and that's going to actually get the club moving. The butt end of the club is going to be moving upward as I'm coming into the golf ball. Because I have forward shaft lean, I'm releasing that forward shaft lean, that's going to shallow out my club. So let me give you an extreme example of this. If I do this properly, I'm going to give you a crazy example here on camera. We're going to do 1/10 of this in the real swing, but it'll allow you to see it really easily. If I'm going to go ahead and do this, I've got a ton of forward shaft lean, my hand's very close to the ground, a lot of leg bend. Watch the butt end of my club as my club's going to reach the ground here. So my club is already on the ground. As this turns up and my club slides forward and releases, if those two things happen together, my club actually has a flat spot that it moves on through there. We call that impact glide. So basically what's happening here is as my legs extend, my shoulder turns up, so my hip's turning up, my shoulder's turning up, the butt end of my club is turning up. That's when I'm releasing this golf club. And what happens is this club swings down and has a section where it goes in very level with the ball. So that's why it's so crucial to use my legs and to start to extend up, because that's going to help the club to turn on up. That's why it's also very crucial to keep your left shoulder working down, and then that's going to, as it rotates around my body, it's naturally going to work up and out. That's also why it's very crucial to take the bottom couple fingers of your hand here and do what's called ulnar deviation, meaning that my hand is doing this. So there's a thumb up, I'm turning my thumb down. As I do that in the golf swing, look how that's going to turn, this bottom part of the club is going to be turned up. So if we watch it like this, I'm turning that club, the butt end of the club up, and that allows me to have forward shaft lean without chopping into the ground. If I had forward shaft lean here, right, and then I just release that, my club would be 6 inches under the turf, big negative angle of attack, really chopping down into the ground. Because my body is working up and my club head is working down, those cancel each other out, and you're going to see what's a flat spot. So that club works in very, very level. If I do that correctly, I can work my club in very level to the ground and still have forward shaft lean and really compress that golf ball. So I can swing pretty hard here. I just brushed the grass, but I had forward shaft lean as I did that. I had lag as my club came on through there. The best players in the world are going to have that forward shaft lean, and they're going to be having their body move up as the club releases down. Those are going to cancel out, and I'm going to come in really shallow. Almost imagine like a 747 plane landing on a runway. It doesn't just kind of crash down in the runway. It comes down and it glides in very level with the runway, and that's going to get that compression on the golf ball. A lot of energy transferring in the golf ball when I'm doing that. So that's your angle of attack through the bag. You want it to be shallow. Nice smooth divots, like you took a razor blade sliced off the top layer of turf. Imagine if you went to the putting green, you start hitting full shots. What you'd like to see is about a dollar bill sized divot, maybe a 1/4 of an inch deep. Right, that's kind of a little bit extreme, but that's that shallow. You're going to be really compressing that golf ball. The most important thing to pair up with that is I got to de-loft this club. So I don't want my club to be shallow, my angle of attack to be shallow because I'm flipping like this. I want my angle of attack to be shallow and still be getting that forward shaft lean. So my hip, my shoulder, my hand all work up as the club works down. That's a real key to compression there. I would say maybe a couple people out of 100, probably less than that, a couple people out of 1,000 maybe do that perfectly. All the players on the PGA Tour do that really well and compress the golf ball really well doing that. So that's going to really help you guys out. Let's go ahead and give you a drill